Good afternoon. Hope you're having a great week. It is Thursday, November 7th, 1:46 p.m. Central Standard Time, local time here in Oklahoma City. I am in my backyard getting things ready to head back out over the road. And I just got really pissed off and decided to come outside and walk around for a little bit, calm down. And what better time to make a video than when I'm really mad? So what am I mad about? I've been dealing with the California Air Resources Board all morning, and after I was good and mad about that, then I got some agent doing cold call sales trying to pressure me into taking some cheap load out of Portland, and wouldn't take no for an answer. And then I told him the load was too cheap. I can't haul it. Then he started like belittling me about my operating costs of my business. And yeah, I need to manage my operating costs better so that I can haul his cheap ass loads. And I just hung up on him. I've said this before, but for anybody who doesn't listen to all of my videos, I have my account flagged at Landstar as do not call. And my contact preferences are set to text and email only. In order for an agent to even find my phone number, they have to dig. My phone number, Landstar Corporate told me my phone number is not listed on like the main contact page of my profile because I'm on the do not call. So I'm not very friendly with these asshole agents trying to move cheap ass loads that are cold calling me whenever I'm on the no call list. But anyway, why am I dealing with CARB? I've said before that I'm not going to deal with California's bullshit. I used to go to California all the time whenever they were just showering me with money to do it. But whenever the West Coast port workers went on, well, they didn't go on strike. Whenever they went off contract, freight went away from California. It went away from the West Coast. And the prices over on the West Coast tanked. And it just made it not worth dealing with California's bullshit if they're not going to pay very well. So I haven't been in California in like 2 years because of the rates. But I think there's going to be a shift back to California and the rates are going to be really good. So I was trying to get legal to go to California again. So I did some digging to find out what I needed to do to get legal. Contacted Landstar. They had this little email they sent me on where to go and all that stuff. So I went and I registered on California's Air Resource Board website, filled out tons of crap about my truck and my business, and then it rejected my compliance on my vehicle and said that I was non-compliant. I have to have a compliance check done. Basically, they have to hook a test meter thing, a diagnostic item, up to my ODB connection. They're not actually going to like hook a filter up to my exhaust pipe and test what's actually coming out of the exhaust. All they do on the test is hook up to the ODB and verify that the DEF system is functional. So I've been calling around trying to find somebody that does that test. And I'm not the only one that thinks California is a fucking shithole, because everyone that I've talked to, except for one, laughed and said that I should reconsider going to California and dealing with their bullshit. no one was doing the carb tests. I called a few Loves and a couple other places, and they all just basically laughed at me and had some derogatory things to say about California when I explained to them what it was. And CARB has a section on their website where you can look for testers, and it's specifically listed as for hire testers that are registered as for hire. I called everyone on that list in Oklahoma, and every single one of them told me that they are not for hire. They are fleet employees. They work for private fleets like J.R. Christner or whatever, places like that. They're not for hire. They only do the tests for their own personal fleets. Everyone except one. There was one company, and I even called Love's Truck Stops in California. I called shops in California as well, and I couldn't find anyone that did this test in California. But this one place that I called told me that they do the test. They knew what I was talking about. $385 to do this test. Starting this upcoming year in 2025, you have to get the test done twice a year. That's $800 per year, plus the $30 registration fee that you have to pay. I'm not sure if that's an annual fee or a one-time fee. And starting in 2028, you have to get it done 4 times per year. Or it might be 2027. I can't remember exactly when. But almost no one does these tests. The places that I talk to, the Loves and the TA places that are the shops that I talk to, the big chain truck stops, I asked them if they had received any communication about it, like, company-wide emails or anything like that. And they're like, nope, I've never even heard of it. I don't know what you're talking about. And like I said, I wasn't just calling places in Oklahoma, I was calling places in California. So the testing requirement starts January 1st, and you can test up to 90 days early. So it basically just started in like October. October 1st was when you could first start doing these tests, these carb tests. But I think it's actually been a requirement for trucks that are registered in California to do the tests. Maybe it's just out-of-state trucks that it starts in 2025. I don't know. I didn't read up on all of their stupid rules. So I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I'm not going to be paying $800 a year or $1,600 a year to California for the privilege of driving in their state. That is an insane permit price, on top of all of my other registration and permits that I have to have. But the place that that actually knew what I was talking about, that was familiar with this test, they said that CARB is having a lot of issues with their system. And they said that I might not actually have to get that test done. They said to just give it up to 36 hours and it'll probably just flag as compliant. She said it takes like 24 to 36 hours for it to fully process. So I might actually process as compliant. because the compliance requirements are not supposed to, the testing requirements are not supposed to start until January 1st. And I can't get a compliance certification to drive there for the next 2 months of this year. So yeah, she told me that it'll probably be marked as compliant. So I might be able to drive in California for the next couple of months. I'll have to wait around for 3 days to see if it gets marked as compliant. But I don't know if I'm going to deal with the bullshit of paying these crazy ass fees and then having to find somebody that's capable and willing to do the test. I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll just have to see. But why do I think rates are going up in California? Well, reasons. So we just had the East Coast port worker or dock worker or whatever strike happen. And that is no longer in the news cycle. People have basically completely forgotten about it. The East Coast port workers going on strike, that is major, major, major news. That could cripple the country. Luckily, they were only on strike for a couple of days. And from what I've read, it's going to take several weeks for them to catch up from those couple of days that they were shut down. So they're probably not going to be able to clear the backlog until the end of the year from them shutting down for just a couple of days. And they did not agree on a contract. All they did was they agreed on like 2 terms on the contract, and they agreed to extend the contract until like January 15th or January 1st. I can't remember the exact date, but they just extended the contract until like January 15th to give time to negotiate their other demands. So we could still be looking at another East Coast strike at the beginning of next year. So there's most likely a lot of companies that are diverting freight over to the West Coast in anticipation of that strike. I think a lot of people did not think that strike would actually happen. They didn't think that the government would allow it because it would basically cripple the country. And I don't want to get into a big rant about this again because I talked about this in a previous video. But there's laws on the books where the federal government is supposed to step in if there's a union that is so big and so powerful that them going on strike could cripple our country. It could be like an existential threat to the country. Then whenever that happens, the federal government is supposed to step in and either completely block the strike or negotiate with the union to do some kind of limited strike, something that doesn't cripple the country. And the Biden administration did not do that. So I think it caught a lot of people by surprise that the strike actually happened, and it was like a full strike. That is insane. And it happened during a natural disaster. It was crazy that happened. So now I think a lot of businesses are terrified that another strike's going to happen in January. So they're most likely diverting a lot of freight over to the West Coast. I haven't seen any data to back that up. That's just going from, the information available to me. I'm just speculating. So that's one of the reasons I was working on getting legal in California. the other reasons why I think freight's going to go up in California, I think the freight market in general is going to go up a lot. We still have way too many trucks in the industry. I'm surprised at how many trucks have managed to ride out this bad freight market. There have been a lot of trucking companies going out of business, but we haven't actually lost many trucks. So we've had a lot of owner-operators go out of business, but they didn't leave the industry. They became company drivers. And we've had places like Yellow go out of business, but those employees that they had went and got hired on at other companies. So with all these companies going out of business, we're not actually losing a lot of trucks off the road. People are just shifting around between owner-operator and companies and stuff like that. So, yeah, we still have way too damn many trucks, but we are likely to have another freight boom. Why are we going to have another freight boom? Well, we just had a really big election. It's still ongoing. Not all of the results are in. The Republicans won the presidency. They have a Senate majority now, and it looks like they might maybe have a House majority. So, if the Republicans get a House majority, then the Republicans are going to control the entire federal government. Now, they don't have a super majority or anything crazy like that where they can just do whatever they want, but they are going to have a lot of capability to push things through. And what are some things that they're planning on pushing through? Well, one is they're going to end this war on fossil fuels. The radical left has this anti-fossil fuel ideology, which is insane. Our advanced technology as a civilization is based off of fossil fuels. You can't have any of what they refer to as green energy, which is not... These politicians create names for things that are usually the exact opposite of what they are. Solar panels are bad for the environment. Wind turbines are bad for the environment. They're nowhere near as efficient as fossil fuels, and they create a lot more waste than fossil fuels. They're made out of a lot of rare earth elements, which, how do we get rare earth elements? Strip mining. Strip mining is the most destructive mining that you can do. What do we do with these turbines once they've reached their life expectancy, which I can't remember what the life expectancy of a wind turbine is. I think it's like 5 to 7 years. The blades on those wind turbines are non-biodegradable. It's like styrofoam or something like that. It's not biodegradable. It's not styrofoam. It's like styrofoam in the fact that it's non-biodegradable. So what do we do with them? We break them into smaller pieces, throw them on a flatbed, and bury them in Wyoming. We treat them the same way we do nuclear waste. We just bury it in the ground. Solar panels also have a short life expectancy. Tons and tons of waste. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't be pursuing that technology, but the radical left trying to force everyone to switch over to things that they term as green, that is insane. It is really bad for the environment. I could rant and rave about that for a long time, but let's get back to the fossil fuels. So they're anti-fossil fuel, which is basically anti-civilization. If we stopped using fossil fuels, then we would basically take a step back to like the 1800s in technology. Even steam engines run on coal. I mean, you can burn anything to run a steam engine technically, but I'm not sure how efficient they would be burning like just regular wood. I think coal produces a lot more heat. Not 100% sure on that, but I mean, that's the level of technology we'd be taking a step back into, is like steam engines, if we stop using fossil fuels. You can't build a solar panel or a wind turbine without fossil fuels. It's a manufacturing product. It's not just a fuel source. But anyway, the left has this anti-fossil fuel agenda so that they can push on a carbon tax, so that they can have more control. And it's really bad for the economy. So now that we have the Republicans taking over, it's going to loosen up the fossil fuel industry. We should see fuel prices drop, and low fuel prices are really good for the economy. And if the Republicans are able to put in some kind of legislation that would stop the Democrats from impeding the fossil fuel industry, if they were to win like the next election, then that would be huge, because fossil fuel companies have to spend a tremendous amount of money on exploration and refinement and stuff like that. And they have not been willing to do that for decades because of the radical left. I can't remember the last time we had a refinery built in this country. And it takes like 10 years to build a refinery. And companies are not willing to invest in refineries because of the radical left. So if the Republicans are able to put in some kind of legislation that stops the left from having their war against the fossil fuels every time they come into power, then we could see fossil fuel companies start investing into things like refineries. We'll just have to wait and see about that. So, cheaper fuel, which is going to be good for the economy. That's going to cause more freight. What else? Tariffs. Trump is already threatening tariffs on China and Mexico. For those of you who aren't familiar with history, we had a freight boom in 2018. Why did we have a freight boom in 2018? Most people don't know. Unless you follow my channel, I've talked about it several times, so you should know. We had a freight boom in 2018 because Donald Trump threatened to tariff China because of a trade imbalance. And companies in the United States started buying as much crap from China as they possibly could to be able to preempt those tariffs, taxes on imports. And they filled every warehouse they could with crap. Those tariffs never ended up happening, but it caused a freight boom in 2018. And then we had a freight recession in 2019 for two reasons. One, because every time we have a freight boom, we have a massive influx of people into the industry. We increase the number of trucks in the industry by a significant amount, and it drives the prices down. And then the other reason is because those companies bought a whole bunch of excess stuff, so they didn't need as much in 2019. They basically bought like everything they needed in 2018 and in 2019. They bought all that in 2018. So there was less freight in 2019 and more trucks. So it's a pretty bad year. I think that's the year that Celadon went out of business. But usually when a trucking company goes out of business, it's not just because of a bad freight market. It's usually also mismanagement, which I think that was the issue with Celadon. I know that was the issue with Yellow. It was a bad freight market, and it was mismanagement, and it was a union. They had the trifecta putting them out of business. So, what else is going to be affecting the freight market? War. War creates uncertainty. Business is not very good when there is uncertainty. When there is uncertainty, businesses tend to get very conservative. They cut back on spending. They don't do things that they don't need to do. So, Trump is most likely going to push for an end to the 2 wars we're involved in. And that's going to be good for the economy. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that I can't think of right now that is most likely going to have a positive impact on the economy. And Trump's also stating that he's going to get rid of the federal income tax. That would be a huge boost to the economy. A massive boost to the economy. So, is that likely to happen? I doubt it. Can the federal government get rid of the federal income tax? Absolutely. The federal income tax is actually illegal. And there have been a lot of people that have stood their ground on that issue and refused to pay federal income tax, and the federal government took everything that they owned and threw them in jail. So the federal government does not have to obey the law. They don't really have any penalties if they don't obey the law. However, if you or I don't obey the law, then they can take everything away from us and throw us in prison. So why is the federal income tax illegal? It's illegal because the Constitution states that the federal government cannot create a blanket tax. They can't create just a flat tax. The federal government can only create taxes for a specific purpose. For instance, the federal government has a highway use tax. So it's a fuel tax. Every time you buy fuel, you pay a federal fuel tax, federal whatever tax. And that money is supposed to be used for highways and interstates. Now, that's another issue where the federal government doesn't really obey the law. It's kind of like Social Security. The federal government has been using Social Security money for things other than Social Security, which is against the law. But the federal government can't legally create a federal income tax, a flat tax like that. They can only create taxes like the fuel sales tax, the highway use tax, because it's for a very specific thing. So how is the federal government getting away with it? Well, the same way they get away with everything. They just ignore the Constitution. The federal government created an amendment to the Constitution that says that they can create a federal income tax. but that amendment is not legal. You cannot create a new amendment for the Constitution that supersedes an existing amendment. So if the Constitution states, that we have the right to freedom of speech, then the government can't come in and create a new amendment that says we don't have the right to freedom of speech, because it is contradicting or attempting to supersede an existing amendment to the Constitution. So why did the federal government create a new amendment saying that they could create a federal income tax instead of getting rid of the amendment that says that they can't? Because it's a lot easier. It's much easier to amend the Constitution than to remove something from the Constitution. So, just a second here. The helicopter flying by. I think it's one of the news channels. There's an airport just south of me, Wiley Post Airport, and that's where at least one of the news channels parks their helicopters. But anyway, yeah, it's definitely something that the federal government could do, get rid of the federal income tax. Don't like quote me on this part of it, because it's not something I'm intimately familiar with. If I remember correctly, the federal income tax was created right around World War II, and it was sold to the people as a temporary tax to help pay for the war effort. It might have been World War I can't remember. I think it was World War II. And I'm fairly certain that it was only supposed to be a temporary tax just to help with the war. And you know how the federal government is. Once they start getting revenue, they don't give it back. So it was supposed to be temporary, and they just kept it in there. So if it's illegal and it was only supposed to be temporary, then why do I think that they're not likely to get rid of it, even though Trump wants to get rid of it? Well, it's because of out of control spending by our federal government. Our federal government is already running massive deficits. They spend more money than they receive. That's the reason we have a national debt. Our national debt is so high that we're getting close to the point where just the interest payment on the national debt is going to be higher than the tax revenue of the government. That is insane. Could you imagine being so far behind in credit card debt that your monthly credit card payment, your minimum credit card payment, was more than what you make in a month? Could you imagine being in that financial situation? That's the financial situation our country is in. Now, we have a fiat currency. We have a faith-based currency, so they can just print as much money as they want. But what gives the currency value is faith. But it's mainly supply and demand. So if they start creating tons and tons of money to pay off the debt, then it's going to cause massive inflation. That's part of the reason why we have so much inflation right now, is just out of control government spending, just inflating the money supply. But the demand for the US dollar has also been going down because the federal government uses our currency as a weapon through sanctions, and the rest of the world has just gotten tired of our bullshit, and they've started de-dollarizing. They've started moving to other currencies. They started moving away from using the US dollar. So yeah, there's a lot of issues right now that hopefully we're able to. There's no way we can fix all the problems in 4 years. But hopefully, you know, we at least like plug the leaks on the ship or get most of the leaks plugged in this 4-year period. But I don't know, it's the future looks bleak. So, back to the freight market. What else? Okay, so we were talking about the income tax. I don't think it's likely to happen because, you know, it's just our government is in too bad of a financial situation. If they got rid of the income tax, it would tank our currency. They would have to cut a lot of government programs if they got rid of it. I don't know. They could offset it with tariffs, which is basically how the government funded itself before the federal income tax, was through taxes on imports. So we could move back to a tariff system instead of an income tax system. I don't know. It's a completely different conversation, and I would need to do some research to talk in detail on that. So, what is the plan? We're going to go to Portland. The trailer is actually ready right now. I could go pick up the trailer right now if I wanted to. It's sitting down there in Dallas. Preloaded trailer. I booked the load on Wednesday, and it was supposed to pick up on Saturday. And the agent sent me an email about 30 minutes after I booked the load and said the trailer is actually ready right now if you want to pick it up. I was like, thanks. And then she called me again this morning at 8 a.m. and said, hey, just a heads up, the trailer's ready. And I was like, yeah, you emailed me yesterday. And I replied back and told you thank you. And she's like, oh, I forgot. So I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to go pick up the trailer. There's a big snowstorm in Colorado right now. So, and I need to get a DOT inspection done on the truck. So what I think I'll do is I'll probably head out tomorrow evening sometime, and I'll go over to the TA here in town and get the DOT inspection done, and then drive down to Dallas, pick up the trailer, and start heading down there. And that'll give me another day on the load. The load doesn't deliver until Thursday of next week. I have plenty of time on the load. But leaving a day early gives me another day to deal with weather. It's winter, and a lot of people don't like running this route in the winter because it is going through a lot of really, really, really bad mountain passes that most people avoid in the winter. A lot of people try to avoid Wyoming through the winter. It's probably the worst place to drive in the winter is Wyoming. So hopefully I get a good weather window. But that's what's going on with me. And I've calmed down a little bit while making this video. I was fuming quite a bit. But we're good now. I'm still waiting on a call back from California Air Resources Board. I called them a couple hours ago, and I was number 9 in queue. And they said that you can sit and wait, or we'll call you. And I sat and waited for about 15 minutes, and I was still number 9 in queue. And then finally, after like 20 or 30 minutes, I moved to number 8 in queue. They must only have like one person answering the phones for CARB. So I chose the option to have them call me. And we've been making this video for 40 minutes. So I've been waiting for probably 2 hours or more for CARB to call me. I don't even know if they're going to be able to get back to me today. And if they're not able to call me today, they'll probably clear the queue and I won't get a call at all. So, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what's going on. The freight market is absolutely horrendous. I don't think that... So, when I was up there in Portland, I made a video up there and I said that I've never experienced the freight market that bad up in Portland. I've never like sat there for a month before and gotten no decent loads at all. I got the load that I got to get out of there was a unicorn load. It was an outlier. It was way better than anything else that was listed the whole time I was there. I've never had that, I've never experienced the freight market that bad in the Portland area. And then I got back to Oklahoma City and I wanted to immediately get back out over the road. I've been sitting here for a month looking for a load. And I finally got a load Wednesday. I don't think I've ever seen the freight market this bad in Oklahoma City. And here's the thing that's really, really bad about that. Is that we are in the peak season. This is the time of year when retail is trying to get everything into position for the holiday shopping season. This is telling me that this holiday shopping season is horrendous. So, yeah, this is kind of scary, but I think things might turn around. I think there's a mixture of a lot of things happening right now to make the freight market so bad. One, we have an election. And like I said earlier, businesses don't like uncertainty. Anytime there's uncertainty, businesses do the absolute minimum spending. So leading up to an election, there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty because elections can have a huge impact on the economy. So now the election's over with, things might start getting back to normal. We also have the East Coast dock worker strike. So there might have been a lot of freight shifting from east to west. That takes time. So that might also be a reason why the freight market's been so bad. And there's a backlog of freight. So, I mean, there's just a lot of things going on right now that are probably adding to why the freight market is so bad right now. But hopefully it picks up over the next couple of weeks. That's what I'm kind of betting on, is that it is going to pick up in the next couple of weeks. I will say that I have gotten a ton of load alerts since I changed my load alerts over to Portland. Nothing really great, but I set my load alerts for after the delivery on the 14th. And there's usually not a lot of loads posted, way in advance. Most of the loads posted on load board are same day pickup. And I've probably gotten a dozen load alerts since Wednesday on loads that are picking up on the 14th or later. And I've gotten like 4 or 5 phone calls from agents trying to get me to take loads out of Portland on the 14th or later. So the loads coming out of Portland are a lot more active than the loads coming out of the Dallas area. I have the exact same load alert that I was using right here in Oklahoma City, 250 mile radius, exact same parameters, and I was only getting like maybe 1 or 2 load alerts a day. As soon as I switched it over to Portland, I started getting like 3 or 4 a day. And it's set to, for, like I said, it's set for loads that don't pick up until after the 14th, which is way out. You usually don't get many, if any, load alerts that far out. So that's a good sign that I might be able to find a good load coming out of Portland. And basically, as soon as I booked the load, I started getting agents calling me within a couple of minutes. So the agents are desperate, which means that they booked loads at rates that are too damn low. And then there were a bunch of loads in the market that caused the rates to go up. And now those agents are stuck with those cheap ass loads, and they're well below the market rates, and they can't get anybody to take them. That's probably why that agent got so confrontational with me, being a jackass and insulting me when I told him that I couldn't afford to haul his load. He's probably stressed out trying to move that load because he negotiated it to such a ridiculously low rate. My operating cost isn't actually $1.75 a mile. My operating cost is way below average. But anytime I'm talking with an agent, that's the operating cost that I use, is $1.75 a mile, because that is approximately what the operating cost for most owner-operators is. And I've talked about this before. Most owner-operators don't have a clue what their operating cost is. And most owner-operators don't take into consideration paying themselves. So once you factor in, all your variable costs of like fuel and maintenance, wear and tear, and then your fixed costs, you convert them to a mileage rate, your truck payment, insurance, permits, registration, tax prep services, bookkeeping services. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. Once you calculate all that stuff into a mileage rate, you're going to be somewhere in the ballpark of like $1 a mile, $1 to $1.15 a mile. And then you need to pay yourself. If you don't pay yourself, how are you going to buy food? How are you going to pay your rent, your mortgage, your car payment, your personal insurance, your health care? None of those are business expenses. So a shitty company driver makes 60 cents a mile these days. And that's the rate that I use to calculate operating cost. So somewhere in the ballpark of like $1.75 a mile is what I would estimate the average owner-operator's operating cost to be. And I suspect that there are a lot of owner-operators out there that have much higher operating costs than that. I know of owner-operators that have fixed weekly costs of like $1,800. That is insane. If you're averaging 2,500 miles a week, you're doing really well. So you're talking about just your fixed costs are like, I don't know what that is, $1,800 out of $2,500, $1.70 or 70 cents a mile, something like that, 70, 80 cents a mile, just on your fixed costs. And your fuel cost is usually your highest expense. I mean, that just gets into a level of crazy on your operating costs. because that is nowhere near your total costs. Those $1,800 a week fixed costs, that was somebody, those are old costs as well. That was back from like 2020, before we had this massive inflation, and that was a prime driver. He was paying like $1,800 a week in fixed costs. That was just like his truck payment, his ELD rental, his insurance, and he had a projected maintenance of like 11 cents per mile that he had to pay. I don't think that was factored into his, no, that was just his fixed cost. The 11 cents per mile was his variable. That was not factored into that. But anyway, I need to wrap this up and get in the house and get my permits up to date and do some final prep things for the truck and get ready to roll out of here. I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to roll out of here. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Saturday. Maybe I'll look at the weather, and if I look at the weather and it says that there's going to be a blizzard across Colorado on like Saturday, then I'll probably wait till Saturday to leave. I don't know. Maybe I'll check out the weather and see if that's going to affect when I'm going to leave. And I'm still not sure if I'm going to be able to drive through California. One of the things I was thinking of was if the weather was really bad across Colorado and Wyoming and the other states I'm going to be driving through, then what I could do is take I-40 across to California, and then take I-5 up to Portland. I think it is 300 extra miles if I take that route, because I've thought about doing that before, and I've ran the mileage on it before, and I think it's 300 miles. I'm not 100% sure. So 300 miles is approximately 5 extra hours of drive time. That's not really a big deal. Yeah, it's, quite a bit of extra money in fuel. Let's see, if you're doing 7 miles per gallon, 300 divided by 7 would be like 40 something. Maybe 42 and some change gallons. We'll go with 40 gallons of fuel at $3 a gallon. So it's like $120. Is that right? That doesn't sound right. That's not much. So it'd be like an extra $120 in fuel to go that route. So hopefully I get some, information back from California on whether or not I'm legal to drive in their state. And if I am legal to drive in their state, then I might drive through California. It's going to add a lot of extra time to the load. It's not just going to be an extra 5 hours, because remember, in California, the truck speed limit's 55. And I will be driving a lot of miles in California. So it's going to add 5 hours of extra drive time on just pure mileage, plus probably an extra 2 to 3 hours, because I'm going to be going a lot slower. I'm not sure of the total miles I'm going to be putting on in California. If I knew the exact number of miles that I would be driving in California, then I could, do those miles by 10 miles per hour to find out like how much extra time it would cost, or it would, how much extra time it would take. I need to trim the trees this winter. When I first bought the house, the previous owners had not done any maintenance on the property. And I trimmed the trees, and the curb is, the street curb right on the other side of that fence. It was from, it was my entire property line, from right over there at the corner of the fence, all the way down to a little bit past the corner of this fence, all the way up to the edge of my driveway. And it was about, how tall was it? It was probably 5 to 6 feet tall. It was almost as tall as I am, of limbs from all of the tree trimming that I did whenever I first bought the house. And that was just one of them. I ended up trimming the trees. Oh my goodness. Like every year for the first 2 or 3 years I had the house, I did like major tree trimming and got them under control. But I haven't trimmed trees in the last 2 years, I don't think. So I'm going to need to probably get out and do it this winter. Anyway, is there anything else I want to say before I wrap this up and upload it? I'll just touch back on what I was saying about the freight market. And this might take a few minutes. This might take like 10 or 15 minutes, but I've made many predictions on these videos. And if I remember correctly, every single one of my predictions has been true as far as what I think the freight market is going to do. Now, there's been a lot of times when I said that I wasn't sure. I think maybe it'll go this way or maybe it'll go that way. I'm not going to count those times when I was just uncertain and, being upfront that I wasn't certain. But there have been a lot of people making a lot of predictions that have been wrong over the last 4 years that I've had this channel. Why are their predictions wrong? Well, whenever you talk to somebody at the truck stop or wherever, and you ask them, like, why do you think the market's going to do that? The answer that I always get is because they feel that way. Like, it's just a feeling. So, most of the predictions I hear are based on people's feelings. And then the other predictions that I hear that come from places like FreightWaves, it's based on misinterpretation of data. And that is really common these days, is improper data analysis. For you to properly analyze data, you have to fully understand the context of the data. And most data analysts just do a really half-assed job of data analysis. They're not really analyzing data. They're just doing formulas against data. They're not doing true analysis. True analysis requires an understanding of the data. So, people have been saying that the freight market's going to turn around ever since the freight market had a downturn. Everybody's been making predictions that the freight market's going to turn around, it's going to get better. And I've been saying in my channel that I've seen nothing to indicate that the freight market is going to get better. Every indicator that I know of is telling me that the freight market's just going to continue to get worse and worse. Now, finally, because of the election that we just had a massive indicator that the freight market is going to turn around. What I expect is a lot of volatility, but in general, the freight market should turn around. When is it going to turn around exactly? That I don't know. I can't give you a firm date because things happen slowly in the business. It takes a long time for people to make a decision and then for that decision to actually fully take place. So, like, if Home Depot orders a whole bunch of crap from China, then the place they order from in China, whenever a large distributor like Home Depot orders something, it usually has to be made after they order it. They usually make things on demand when you're dealing with large scale orders like that. It's not like they're ordering shit off of a shelf. So they'll put an order into China, and then China has to make the products. They have to manufacture it, and they have a certain amount of it that they can make per day or week or month or whatever to fulfill that order. And then it has to get packaged. It has to go through customs. It has to get loaded on a cargo ship. It has to come across the ocean, has to get unloaded, go through customs, has to go to a warehouse, get moved out of an intermodal container into a van, and then it has to go here, there, and everywhere. So you're talking several weeks or months from the time that things change in the freight market, well, things change in the economy, until they affect the freight market. So I expect right now businesses are scurrying to buy products before Trump gets into office for fear of tariffs. So we could see a freight boom as early as the end of this year, you know, like maybe as early as December or halfway through December. Most likely, our first quarter, which is usually the slowest freight quarter of the year, our first quarter could actually be a really good quarter this year, or this upcoming year. There's going to be a lot of things up in the air. People are going to be trying to figure out exactly what the Republicans are going to do. And if the Republicans come out and give details as to what they're going to do, then businesses are going to be a lot more confident in making business decisions. Right now, it's really vague as to what the Republicans might do as far as tariffs. So businesses are going to be hesitant to go all in on anything. So if something happens where the Republicans say, we're going to tariff Mexico and we're going to tariff China, and they outline the specific details of their plan, and they say, we're going to put this through day one, then we're going to see a freight boom. But if they just keep it up in limbo and say, you know, if Mexico doesn't do something about their illegal immigrants, or if China, you know, doesn't do something about this, then we might tariff them. If they keep it ambiguous like that, then I don't think we're going to have a freight boom, but we could see some companies trying to preempt those tariffs. So there's a lot of things up in the air, but in general, I think the freight market is about to make a turnaround. We're about to see some improvement in the freight market, and it will probably be most noticeable in the spring. So sometime around March or April, the market could start getting decent again. But anyway, let's wrap it up. I just started thinking right there. I was like, man, if we start having another freight boom, then YouTube's going to be flooded with those YouTube truckers again. All those YouTube truckers that whenever we hit the all-time high freight market and all those company drivers became owner-operators, and then they started making their YouTube channels and telling everybody how they were the greatest business owners of all time, and they were arrogant and cocky and telling everybody about how amazing they were at running their business, and you know, they're making $10,000 a week Oh my goodness. And then whenever the freight market took a downturn, they all became company drivers again. I hope all of you listened to me during the freight boom when I was warning you constantly to not get heavily in debt. Don't get your expenses too high, because the freight market is eventually going to turn down. And if you get your expenses too high, especially back then during the freight boom, we had massive inflation, we had part shortages, and the price of everything in the industry, new trucks, used trucks, everything just started skyrocketing. And I was warning people, don't get heavily in debt, because I was looking at these brand new owner-operators, and I know they've only been an owner-operator for a couple of weeks, a month or something like that, and they're out there buying new cars, new houses, they're buying second trucks. Like, I know you haven't had an opportunity to build a nest egg yet. You're just living paycheck to paycheck and spending every penny as it comes in like a company driver does. You can't do that as a business owner. So, hopefully, all of you made good business decisions during the freight boom and during the freight recession, and you were able to ride this out, because I think there is finally some light at the end of the tunnel. This is the first time that I've made a prediction that the freight market is going to come back up since the freight market went down a couple years ago. And I don't think it's going to happen. Like, I know most people operate in the short term, like days or hours or maybe a week. I want to be clear that I don't think the freight market is going to shoot up over the next couple of weeks. I think we might see something mid to late December at the earliest, but most likely it's not going to be until spring that we see anything significant. And the thing is that brokers are really, really hesitant to raise rates. So even if we do start having a freight boom, the rates are going to lag. The brokers are going to try to keep the rates as low as possible for as long as they can. It's only when they get desperate that they're going to start raising rates. So we might start having a freight boom in March, April, and it might get a lot easier to get a load, but we might not see a significant increase in rates. It could be, later into the summer or even into the fall before we start seeing substantial rate increases. But most of these brokers still have this ideology that the rates that we had back in 2019 are good rates. We've had a massive amount of inflation. 2019 rates are not good rates, but that's still like the mindset that these agents have. Like the agent that just pissed me off, trying to move loads at $248 a mile. That was a decent rate in 2019. This isn't 2019 anymore. Expenses are much, much higher. So, anyway, let's wrap it up. Let me get back inside. Right now I'm just procrastinating. I'm just avoiding getting in there and getting stuff done. But I need to go get some stuff packed up and get some stuff done. Get ready to head out of here. So, anyway, hope you're having a great one. And is there anything else? I don't think so. All right, we'll wrap it up. Bye.